Steady Tattoo. And then from Steady Tattoo, other friends who were like, they saw that and they were like, oh, well, you do posters for our band. And then from there it was like, okay, well, you know, do you want to do this wall? And then it was like, okay, do you want to do this art show? And then there was this art show and this other art show, and it all kind of just exploded. I don't know if I ever was like, oh yes, I would like to be a professional artist. But it was kind of like I got thrust into this position where all of a sudden I was working less and less at real jobs because the other stuff was taking up more time and making me a little bit more money. And like I kind of never really expected it to become like a career. It didn't seem like that was what it was going to do. It was just kind of something that I did because it was important for me to do it. Like it kept me sane. And now it's just like it's kind of both. It's become a bit of a desk job, and it's also become like the thing that keeps me sane. Well, like sitting and cutting holes and stuff for 16 hours at a time, or like for 12 hours at a time, or 8 hours at a time, or 3 hours at a time. It's kind of like you're basically sitting there at your desk, just like the same way that you'd be sitting in a cubicle, or if you're on the internet for 3 hours, just responding to emails or trying to promote your stuff or whatever it is that it ends up being. Like that's just as much part of my job as actually making new work or being outside the paint. Like the amount that you get to paint compared to the amount that you're doing like logistical things, like driving around the Home Depot so you can build panels to paint them, or making phone calls trying to figure out like, all right, so how do I get this moved from this place to this place so that it all works out, or figuring out like who's going to be helping you with the next mural, or figuring out where the next mural is. I'll turn on the TV and be like, oh wait, I have to pause that and think about that for a second. Whatever it is, like I watch a lot of Discovery Channel and a lot of like National Geographic shows and stuff like that. It's like, alright, so what's going on in the world outside of the city? I grew up in the city, and so like there's like this weird sort of city encroaching on prairie, encroaching on city dynamic thing happening in my head all the time, where it's like, oh man, I just want to get out of here. But then once I'm out of here, I'm like, oh man, I'm so cold. And it's kind of like going back and forth between those things. Growing up in Minnesota, it was kind of like paper snowflakes and graffiti, I guess. That's kind of how I got started. It was like trying to figure out what you can do with the crappiest possible materials and make it look interesting. And for the longest time, it was terrible. Nothing I did was good, and that's totally fine. I graduated high school at 16. I fought forest fires for a year, and in 2005 I got a artist initiative grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board after doing my research on how to apply for grants and stuff like that. And that was kind of like the breaking point, I guess. I basically look for outdoor walls that I find interesting, but sometimes people come to me. Like every wall is different, and every wall has a different story. Salon Stella, I was asked, I had the grant funding from the Minnesota State Arts Board, and I had posted a bulletin on MySpace, and they got back to me with like the biggest, coolest wall. And I was like, excellent, I'll take it. Like, what do we have to do to get it? So I put together a proposal and talked to the building owner and got her for coffee, and she was like, if you think you can do this, then we think you should do this. So, but then other stuff, it's just every wall is different, I guess. It's really sort of fun, curious, trying to convince people to let you paint on their stuff. At a certain point, like the art stuff that I'm doing now killed the desire to do the graffiti stuff that I was doing then. It's all the same. It's the same resources. Like you're basically saying, okay, well I can take this $2 can of spray paint and turn it into, you know, this thing, wherever it is, whatever it is. Like it's just about resourcefulness. I think that like the ethic of graffiti, where you take graffiti and like these real minimal resources and turn it into something bigger than yourself, or that you perceive as larger than yourself. I think that was like the thing that carried over. And it was definitely like a good research period where I figured out like, all right, so this spray paint works really good with this color, and this color works good with this color. But it was, I don't know that there was anything significant about the graffiti that I did. I think it was just like, I thought a lot about composition, but I didn't think about a whole lot other than that. Like, I wanted it to be beautiful, but I didn't want it to be, it didn't satisfy anything emotionally, I guess. Like that was my experience with graffiti. It's all just a different surface to paint on, I guess. smaller stuff, I'll build the frame up and then sand the frame down, and paint the edges. And it used to be that I would make everything spray paint, but now it's that I'll collage the background and I'll put the spray paint outline on first, and then collage what it's supposed to look like compositionally, and then I'll spray paint the outline back on again. But for larger stuff, it's like I'll take the stencil and grade it out and chop it up and enlarge it a little bit, probably at Kinko's or somewhere like that, and then project it from there onto like a 4 foot by 4 foot panel of wood, and then cut the holes out with like it's called a photo zip. It's kind of like a router. You can use it as a drill and as like a cutting tool, and it's kind of perfect for stencils. Like it was made for sinking into walls and cutting out the holes with power outlets, but instead I'm using it differently. My dad gave me one. It's like, here, I thought you might find this interesting. It's kind of like a big fabric knife. Alright, what can I do? I think I've probably gone through 300 blades. It's like when you're done for like drawing, you can build stuff. When you're done for like building stuff, you can sand stuff. When you're done for like sanding stuff, you can cut stuff. When you're done for like cutting stuff, you can chop little pieces of paper out of magazines and make different. So there's a lot of different aspects to it now. And so if I don't feel like doing something, I can not do something and still be pretty okay with it. I've been separating color fields out of magazines and like collecting magazines and just chopping them all up. Harvesting. I call it harvesting, I guess. Where I'm taking like every piece of color and being like, here's the blues, here's the reds, here's the texts. Like, it all has their purpose, I guess. Billy is a mountain goat from Switzerland. I took the reference photo that I used for that when I was in Switzerland with my little sister, and I decided that would be the first large-scale stencil that I would cut, because I wanted my little sister to understand that experience was important. But Billy also kind of represents the devil. At first, when I was making paintings, it was like I knew that everyone had a favorite color and everyone had a favorite animal, and so if I made a painting of every color and of every animal, then I would make a painting for everyone, hypothetically. Making public art, it's not just for you, like, and so that's part of it, is that like animals are very universal and very, very sort of, everyone has, like every culture on the planet has some sort of like spiritual attachment to the animals that are specific to their region. Like the return of the white buffalo is this huge thing, and it should be considered this huge thing by everyone. There's all of these different sort of processes to come together. And so that's what I tried to do for a long time, and I would make like these prints. I would spend weeks making these prints, just like spraying. And I think I made like 100 elephants, because people would just kept buying these elephants for like $20 and I would sell them out of my backpack. So that, I mean, I think it's different for everyone. The significance is different for everyone. But for me, it's like, it's just something where it's really universal. Like you can say things with a shark that you can't say with like a mouse. You can say things with a mouse that you can't say with a crane. It depends on what I'm trying to do. I really like cheetahs just because nobody cuts stencils of cheetahs. Like that's just kind of like maybe that's a little bit of an ego thing where it's like, yeah, okay, so you can cut stencils, but you can't cut stencils of cheetahs. I'm good at cutting stencils of cheetahs. Like whatever you're happy making, like make that and take every little thing that you learn and use that. Like we all have the ability to do whatever we want to in life. Like let's say you want to be the guy that builds the copper structures to go on the tops of buildings that haven't been built yet, or whatever it is. Like there's art. There's so many different aspects to art. Like you can basically create a job for yourself by being positive about life and just really enjoying yourself and being passionate about what you do.